The Carolina Hurricanes are struggling through a difficult road trip, but Jared Ellis of Locked On Carolina Hurricanes is here to discuss what's going wrong and what they can do to get back on track. We've got that and a lot more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Just download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Carolina Hurricanes, Jared Ellis. And Jared, this West Coast start to the road trip hasn't been easy for the Canes. What has been their biggest problem during this difficult start to the road trip?
Yeah, and it's not. And first of all, thank you for having me back on the show, Gil. But man, it's not even going to this road trip. I mean, you can go back to like the start of the season. Like the Hurricanes, they are not the team that we've come to know and expect over the past 5 years, and there's been a lot of blame put around. Obviously, folks are looking at the goaltending situation of Ronta and Kochekov. Obviously, Anderson is still out indefinitely with his blood clotting issue. And the goaltending hasn't been great. And there's definitely some chatter of do they need to go out and trade for a goalie? I'm personally getting to that point where I definitely think it's getting time. They need to at least start looking around. But, even you take that aside, just the team out in front of the goalies has been doing nothing to help support those guys, and really dysfunctional, sloppy. I mean, the defense is looking like Swiss cheese out there, and we've come to expect this team to be one of, if not the best defensive teams in the league, and for them to go out look like Swiss cheese, it's not great. And there have been on multiple occasions of Brind'Amour, Stahl, and other guys saying how there are guys in the locker room that aren't buying into what the Hurricanes are doing. And I really think that needs to be addressed quickly, because we still got a lot of hockey left right now. The puck just dropped on the game against Vancouver when we're recording this. So it's early December. There's still a lot of time left to get things going. But the longer this goes on, the more concerned I'm getting, because we aren't really seeing a lot of improvement. And it definitely feels like whoever it is, I mean, folks are, of course, speculating on, who it is and whatnot. But I definitely think it's getting to the point where, like, if you can't get these guys on the same page, you just need to move on. I would much rather have a roster of like half AHL guys and everyone's on the same page. Everyone's going out there doing their job. And then, okay, they don't make the playoffs, because right now this team does not look like a playoff team. And then have what we have right now of a very dysfunctional team that can't put things together, and then miss the playoffs again, because again, they're not looking very playoff like right now.
I mean, Rod Brind'Amour stresses defense. I mean, that is his MO. Yeah. How is he handling this situation? Because it's got to be driving him crazy.
Oh, I know it has to be driving him crazy. I mean, you talk about defense, him being MO, he's a back-to-back Selke trophy winner. So he's obviously going to be pretty tight-lipped on this stuff, along with, everyone else, around the Hurricanes when it comes to this. So don't really know what he's doing and saying, behind closed doors. But you can definitely see some frustration starting to come out. Going back to the game against Edmonton where they completely crapped the bed, in the first period, it was over within the first minute. Okay.
Right.
Okay. And, Edmonton scored 2 goals then. And, he said mid game, they were on their way to losing like 15-0 or something like that. He's definitely getting frustrated. He's started saying how folks aren't buying in these press conferences after games, which at first it was just players, mainly Jordan Stahl, saying that. But I definitely, and you can kind of infer that he is subtly asking management to, help him when it comes to the roster, whether it be first and foremost, I think they need to figure out their goaltending situation. And obviously in a trade, like, hey, say so and so is, a problem, in the locker room. All right, put that guy in that trade for X goalie. I definitely think he's definitely starting to get frustrated. They really haven't had a rough patch like this since like the first half of his first year coaching, when they went from second in the last league to the Eastern Conference Final that year. But then they didn't really have expectations on them back
Right.
in 2018, 2019. They didn't then. Now, going into the season, they were Stanley Cup favorites. So you have this dysfunction on the team that you're dealing with right now, trying to get these guys on the same page, trying to do whatever he can, along with having all these eyes on you now. Obviously, Raleigh, small market, you're not going to have the eyes on you that like you would in like New York or Toronto or something like that. But when you're good, you have more eyes on you. So you figure that stress is also getting to him as well. But he does a good job hiding it for the most part, but you can definitely tell it's starting to get to him.
Is management on the same page with Rod Brind'Amour? Do you think they're looking to ship out some of these players who are allegedly not buying in? And are they looking to bring in a goalie at this point?
I think they gotta be. I think it's clearly evident. Brind'Amour, he has a good relationship with Waddell and Dundon and the front office. He has a good relationship with those guys. So, and then obviously those folks are seeing what's happening out there too. So they're saying, all right, this is an issue here, this is an issue there. They're seeing all these issues. So they've got to know, Gil. They've got to know. If they aren't, then there's a problem. And I mean, I believe it was after the Edmonton game, Sarah Sivian, now of Bleacher Report, said that on Twitter that there's no excuse if they don't go out and get Brind'Amour a good goalie, because again, you're number one. Brind'Amour even said it. Anderson hasn't really been healthy since he got here, since he signed that initial deal in free agency. There's always been something, which sucks because when he has been healthy, he has been really stinking good. I mean, think back, to I believe it was his first year or second year when like he was on the verge of being a Vezina finalist, and then he tore, I believe it was his MCL or one of those things in his knee, and he just hasn't been healthy, and I think they really need to go out and get him. But back to what I was saying about Sivian, she said that if they don't, there's no excuse. What are you doing? But yeah, they've got to fix this roster because their big brain money ball moves that they're trying to do in the offseason, like bringing in Lemieux on a cheap deal, bringing D'Angelo back on a cheap deal. All these other like smaller moves. I mean, aside from like Orlov and Bunting, those were kind of the bigger ones. Like all these smaller money ball type moves haven't really panned out all that well this season. And Lemieux, he just got back into the lineup in the game against Calgary, I believe it was. D'Angelo, he's been in the press box, which I do think that was the right move. He was just a traffic cone out there getting Chatfield on the ice. That was definitely the much better move. You can tell him and Orlov are starting to develop some chemistry down on that third pairing. I think that's something that's key for Orlov to develop here and get used to the system of having that consistent defensive partner. And I just think that a lot of the moves they tried to do this offseason haven't really panned out as much. Even like some of the other like smaller moves, guys that I can't even remember their names. I remember a couple of those guys that are more like AHL fringe type
Right.
guys.
Right.
They've gotten traded. Like you didn't even keep them around. So it just feels like they're making moves almost just to make moves. And also, it's starting to feel like, hey, maybe having an AHL affiliate isn't the best thing, because you look at the way your roster is functioning right now, and yeah, it just feels like it's all over the place, and there's not that direction that we're used
Mm-hmm.
to with this team.
Well, let's see if the Canes can turn it around. Jared, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Yeah, you can find the podcast at Locked On Hurricanes wherever you are listening to this podcast, whether it be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever. It's going to be there, Sirius XM as well. It's going to be on their app, and you can go find it over on YouTube at Locked On Hurricanes, where we will obviously be covering tonight's game against Vancouver, as well as the remainder of the road trip against Ottawa, Detroit. And it's not a road trip game, but they're back home in on the 15th against Nashville in the second half of a back-to-back against that game against Detroit. Not intentional of wearing the Tiger shirt. I just realized that as I say Detroit, but you can also find me at Jared Ellis _96. Hopefully, fingers crossed, things will turn around for the Hurricanes.
All right, Jared, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. It is great to welcome back to the show the co-host of Locked On Avalanche, Shaggy Von Doom himself, Cale Sullivan. And Kyle, kind of a rough time for the Avs right now. Still in first place, not all gloom and doom, but not playing the kind of hockey you expected them to play. What's going on in Denver right now?
Oh, that's a wonderful question, my friend. It depends on which side of the fan base you ask, because again, you are correct. They're sitting number one in the Central. And this goes back to that Tom Brady debate. Like, yes, you were first as the Patriots, but you're in a weak division. The same could be said for the Colorado Avalanche. It doesn't take a lot to sit at the top of the Central right now in the state of the Western Division. But the Western Conference, it's the Avalanche. Yes, they're statistically a good team, but we all have eyeballs and we're all watching these games. And for the Avalanche to drop games against the Winnipeg Jets and the Philadelphia Flyers, and the nature that they do, you mentioned the Colorado Avalanche, you think of players like Nathan MacKinnon, Cale Makar, Mikko Rantanen, with the new acquisitions of Ryan Johansson, Tomas Tatar, Miles Wood, Ross Colton. Sounds like an all-star team. Nobody is playing like an all-star. There's no leadership on this team right now because the captain, Gabe Landeskog, has been out for about a year and a half. And nobody is stepping up into that leadership role, and it shows. This team could, in their sleep, score 3 goals a game. And it's just not translating right now. And it's frustrating for the fan base.
Losers of 4 out of 5 as of now, although there was a loser point in there in the mix. What is the biggest problem that this team is having on the ice? I mean, the leadership definitely an issue, kind of harder to correct, but what's causing them to struggle on the ice right now?
Honestly, if you watch a game wire to wire, you watch the full 60 minutes, there's just no push. The Avalanche that everybody likes to know and remember is that cup run Avalanche team. They all rallied around Blink-182's All the Small Things because that's what it took to put that team together to win the Stanley Cup. All the small things. Currently, this Avalanche team, there are no small things being put together. There's a lot of lines completely checking out. Me and Chris Vaselli, my co-host over on Locked On Avalanche, we talk about individual lines that stand out because this team is so deep. You could talk, a lot of teams get the opportunity to talk top 6. The Avalanche could talk about a top 9, top 12 on some nights. And Ross Colton, Miles Wood, they have been just fan favorites so far. But when they take the night off, everybody takes the night off. Ryan Johansson, Valerian Nichushkin, Mikko Rantanen. When they check out, they check out. And teams, when you're the Colorado Avalanche, they're going to play their best game against the Colorado Avalanche because you want to prove yourself against a team comprised of such talent. And you can't take a night off against anybody.
Is there somebody in this locker room right now who can assume the leadership position, or do you think this team needs to make a move to bring in somebody to help be a leader in their locker room?
Well, if you ask who is the leader on this team, everybody would point to Nathan MacKinnon. But that's a role that he will tell you that's Gabe Landeskog. He is the captain of this team, and I'm not going to take a letter. This team knows what to do, which he's not wrong. Going out and getting a leader, they just got Ryan Johansson, who played for the Nashville Predators. He knows something about leadership. It is kind of awkward to come into a recent Cup champion and try and usher yourself as a leader, but he has those qualities. Tomas Tatar has been in the league since 1881. He knows how to be a leader as well. He's been in some locker rooms, good and bad. This team has leaders. Nobody's stepping up to that role. You have Devon Toews, who could be a leader, a quarterback. You have Cale Makar, a generational talent, who could tell you a thing or two on how to pony up and play the game. Nobody's stepping up to that role right now. You could bring in anybody right now. They could have went out and got Patrick Kane. He would not have been the leader because this team has leaders. Nobody wants to be the leader right now.
Is it almost like they have too much respect for Landeskog that they don't want to step on his toes, so to speak?
It's one of those that we found success one way, and we're not going to mess it up. We know how to do this, but nobody is doing the things to do that they did before. It's following the same script, but not the same actors, expecting the same results. It's a little bit of insanity right now, and when things don't happen, everybody gets frustrated. But you have to put in the work. You have to put in the effort. And none of that's happening right now. And you'll see when the Avalanche win games, it's because the lines are feeding off each other. The adrenaline, the mojo, the momentum, they feed off each other. But when you start a game and Mikko and Nate come off the ice, not making shots, everything's just out of sorts, it falls all the way down. And then the Avalanche are just climbing up a mountain all game long.
Team defense hasn't been as good as it has been in the past. Is this a goaltending issue? Is this a team defense issue, or a little bit of both?
Well, Cale Makar is a generational talent. Devon Toews is also in the shadow of Cale Makar, but a generational talent. He has an astounding hockey IQ. It is very underrated in the National Hockey League. Two incredible defensemen. You have Josh Manson, Bowen Byram, Jack Johnson. Filter in whoever you want on defense. They are set on defense. Alexander Georgiev, fantastic goalie. Good enough to win you games. The forwards don't have cohesion, and neither do the defense. And when the defense doesn't trust themselves, there's a lot of overplay and underplay. And you leave Georgiev getting peppered in shots. When was the last time we talked about the Avalanche getting outshot? It happens a lot now. And it doesn't matter if you have Patrick Waugh back there. If you're letting up that many shots, just jumbled up when you have your less confident defenseman camping out in front of your goalie, screening your own goalie, it has to be cleaned up. It's not the quality, it's just the performance that has to be cleaned up, because the players that they put on the ice, on paper, this is a fantastic team. Execution is where they're lacking.
So, what, if anything, can the coaches do to wake this team up?
They have tried swapping the lines. They have tried putting Mikko on the second line, Nathan MacKinnon on the top line. Injuries have made it to where there's been a necessity of swapping lines, and it's been one of those to fire everybody up. The response rate is not there. It's a little concerning, and it's one of those things that you are doing almost everything to get things going and nothing's happening. And it's going to be one of those where the team has to look at themselves and say, this is enough. First in the Central is not good enough. You want to win games. You don't want to lose games against the Philadelphia Flyers. You're the Colorado Avalanche. You should be a better team.
At home, no less.
At home, where it was the safe place. Like, you are like an incredible team on home ice. And if on Military Appreciation Night, and you're putting an effort like that, the team has to get embarrassed, which they already have. 8-2 against St. Louis earlier this year. You're going to have to figure it out, and somebody has to say, enough. They're almost there.
Kyle, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you and your co-host on social media?
The number one place you can find Locked On Avalanche, if you search us on YouTube, we're there. Hey, leave us a like, leave us a subscribe, jump in the YouTube comments. We're right there. You can find us on Twitter, which is X. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us every morning on any one of those. But if you follow us on YouTube, that's where you get us first.
All right. Kyle, thanks. Always a pleasure to have you here.
It's always an honor, my friend.
A new NHL season brings all sorts of possibilities. If a player on your team could score 50 goals, your favorite team could hoist the Stanley Cup, and you can win big playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports, and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you have to do is pick whether studs like McDavid, Ovechkin, or MacKinnon will record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in any given game. To win a 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, hockey fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Florida Panthers, the one and only Mondo Man, Armando Velez. And Armando, another win for the Panthers on Sunday. Pretty consistent winning lately, but some extracurriculars going on that going to need to be followed up. What are you hearing right now?
Yeah, as we're recording this, 9:40 p.m. on a Sunday night, Eric Benson will be having a hearing tomorrow under Rule 46.2 aggressor for the altercation that happened with Nick Cousins on Sunday afternoon at Nationwide Arena. So now looking at it, and from this whole game in general for the Panthers and the Blue Jackets, as far as specifically on that one. Everything as far as everything that escalated, you have to go back to with a minute left in the first period where Gabranson had a hit up high on the far side on Nick Cousins with about a minute left. And it's crazy because the second period for the Panthers and the Blue Jackets, no goals, not a lot of activity going on. The Panthers only surrendered 5 shots on goal in the second period, and then everything within the first 30 seconds. And even the broadcast for the Panthers mentioned that about the Panthers' last penalty-free game that happened, which happened in 2017 against the Arizona Coyotes, and then all that altercation happens and all. But thankfully, most importantly, Nick Cousins is okay as far as that.
Yeah, that obviously is very good news to hear. And look, this team has been winning a lot lately. They're getting healthier. Talk to me about what the keys are to the success in recent games for the Florida Panthers.
It's been for the Panthers. It's really mostly been about the defensive side of the puck for them. And it's crazy because of how what they were just a few years ago, over 4 goals a game and all the run and gun style, and then having to change all the growing pains that happened last season, not getting their first 3-game winning streak until late January or early February. Now we've seen the Panthers have quite a lot of them after Sunday's game against the Columbus Blue Jackets. That's a 3-game winning streak right then and there for the Panthers. But it's crazy because it's really what the Panthers have done 5-on-5, and also the goaltending. Both the goaltenders, Ant Stolarz and Sergei Bobrovsky, are at a 912, 913 save percentage around there, and that's the performance that you need to have on the defensive side. But it also comes down to that top line for the Florida Panthers. The grouping mostly of Sam Reinhart and Alexander Barkov together. And they've had to have Evan Rodriguez and Carter Verhaeghe switch in and out here and there on the top line. The last 2 games the last game and a half has had Verhaeghe on that top line, but it's really been Sam Reinhart and Alexander Barkov really clicking. Barkov is at a plus 20, which leads the NHL, which is tied for the NHL lead in plus minus. Only has been on the ice for 6 goals against at even strength this season. And let's also not talk about Sam Reinhart, what he's doing. Fifth in the NHL in points, third in the NHL in goals, and tied for first with the most multi-point games this season. It's just incredible for what this Florida Panthers team has done. I know this team has been mostly top heavy for the most part as far as the forward group, but they're getting contributions from the blue line as well. Only one player has more goals than Oliver Ekman-Larsson as far as defensemen, and that's Quinn Hughes. Only one person has more than OEL as far as that. So they got contributions of that, and got to give credit to the OELs, the Dmitry Kulikovs, what happened in the first 16 games before Brandon Montour and Aaron Ekblad came back to the lineup as well. And it's just about the other guys starting to get going. Eetu Luostarinen is now on a 2-game goal streak for the Panthers as well. Anton Lundell is now starting to get going as well for the Panthers, and it's just really been a lot of things plugging in and just going right for the Panthers, and that includes 7 of their last 9 games. The Panthers have gone perfect on the penalty kill after the team really struggled out of the gate, and 34 of 37 in that stretch, Gil.
Very impressive. And again, another reason why this team is winning. Talk to me about Reinhart on the power play, because he seems very lethal with the extra attacker.
Yeah, for the Panthers, it's just really about getting in out up front, and also the guys setting him up, and that includes Matthew Tkachuk as well, who just has so much great vision on the ice. When you get the pucks down low and you have so many eyes on Matthew Tkachuk, you have that opportunity right there to feed Sam Reinhart right in the bumper, and as well as having Alexander Barkov out on that flank as well, which is so much helpful for him. And we have to mention this. When players are in a contract year, that's when they step up the most. And Sam Reinhart is definitely in that category for the Panthers, and it's definitely looking great for him. As far as the Panthers' ability to afford him, that remains to be seen, with the cap going up $4.2 million as far as the projection. But right now, the Florida Panthers are really liking what they see in Sam Reinhart, as well as the guy who is there for rebound opportunities as well, and just has so much great vision as far as when he's going north-south, and then when you have an opportunity to when you're getting to the corner and an opportunity for a backhand feed in the middle, he just has so much great vision on the ice. And also to mention the other teammates for Sam Reinhart on the power play. Barkov today on Sunday got his first power play goal of the season.
Wow.
28 points in 24 games, and the Panthers aren't even at game 28. So just goes back to the whole defensive prowess for the Panthers that just that will eventually carry over to the offensive end as well. So just goes to show, even when one area of the ice isn't necessarily clicking, because of what the Panthers do defensively, eventually the goals will come for the Panthers.
About to head west for a long road trip. What are the keys to continued success when they're on the road out in California and the West Coast?
Yeah, it just comes down to scoring first and getting leads going into the second period as well, because the Panthers, they are 9-0-2 now when leading after period 1, and 12-0-2 when it's lead or tied. So that it just comes down to scoring first and having and getting up to a good start for the Panthers, and really it's been how they've closed games as well. They as far as forcing teams to the perimeter, that's really been the Panthers' bread and butter as far as late game situations. And I know we mentioned unsung heroes as far as Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Dmitry Kulikov, but I got to include someone like Kevin Stenlund. He's the only guy in the bottom 6 who has more than 5 goals on the season, and he's about to hit a career high as far as points. He's there in late situations when it comes to key defensive zone draws in order for the Panthers to get clears. And he's out on the main PK unit as well for the Panthers. Him and Eetu Luostarinen are 2 guys who are paired together as far as that. So it really comes down to continuing what you're doing whenever you're down a man, whether it's a 6-on-5 in late game situations, or whether you're on the PK, about just not overextending yourself and putting yourself out of position so that there aren't those easy rebound opportunities for opposing players. That's really what it comes down to. And thankfully for the Panthers, this next one against Seattle's on a 6-game losing streak right now. 7 right now. So that's really going to be not it's not going to be an easy matchup, because the Panthers, it's never easy to go out west, but thankfully they have that. But as far as what's coming up, it's going to be tough. The Edmonton Oilers are hot. The Vancouver Canucks are one of the best teams in the NHL. Look, it's crazy what happens when you have coaching behind the bench there as far as that. And it's not going to be easier as far as what the end of the road trip. Matthew Tkachuk once again making a return to Calgary, even though Calgary is still figuring things out as well. But so far, so good.
All right, Armando, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
They can follow me on X at Monoman12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And come on down for the ride, because this is a really fun hockey team to watch.
All right, Armando, thanks so much. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Gail. Always a pleasure.
Don't forget, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. I want to thank my guest, Jared Ellis of Locked On Carolina Hurricanes, Kyle Sullivan of Locked On Avalanche, and Armando Velez of Locked On Florida Panthers. I want to thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Everydayers, we are here every day, Monday through Friday, bringing you the biggest stories from around the National Hockey League. I'm Gil Martin. I host the Monday edition of Locked On NHL, and I co-host the Friday edition along with Rachel Donner. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe, and thanks for listening to and watching the Locked On NHL podcast.